All right, today we're going to dive into something, and it's going to challenge one of our most fundamental beliefs, the very idea of good versus bad. What if I told you our actions aren't really either? What if there's a completely different and way more powerful way to look at everything we do? So let's start with the big question. Is there really such a thing as a good or a bad action? I mean, on the surface, it seems so obvious, right? But this is a question that thinkers and philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries. Because honestly, the closer you look, the blurrier those lines get. Just think about it for a second. An action that's totally praised in one culture might be completely condemned in another. And hey, you don't even have to look at other cultures. Just look at your own life. I'm sure there's something you did 10 years ago that you thought was the right thing to do, but now you kind of cringe when you think about it. See? These labels of good and bad, they're not solid ground. They're constantly shifting. Okay, so if we're saying that the labels good and bad are kind of shaky, what's the alternative? What are actions then? Well, here's a totally different way to frame it. Get this, the idea is that an action isn't the thing itself. It's just a consequence, a ripple effect of what's going on inside of you. What we do on the outside is just a mirror of our inner state, of our level of awareness at that moment. So the action itself is neutral. What truly matters is where it's coming from. You know, think about a time someone snapped at you. Your first reaction is probably, wow, that was a bad thing to do. But what if we look deeper? What if those harsh words are just bubbling up from some hidden pain they're not even aware of? From this viewpoint, the action isn't evil, it's simply unconscious. And you know, this works the other way around too. What about so-called good deeds? Imagine someone donating a ton of money to charity. Looks great on the outside, right? But if they're only doing it to get their name on a building or to feel superior, well, how purely good is that really? The inner motivation is the whole game. Okay, so if good and bad are basically flawed labels, then what is the real difference? I mean, there has to be a way to tell what's what, right? What should we be looking for instead? The real distinction, the real game changer, isn't between good and bad. It's between conscious and unconscious. A conscious action, that's when you're acting with awareness. It brings harmony, clarity, love. An unconscious action, though, that's when you're on autopilot, driven by stuff you haven't looked at. And that, well, that's what creates pain and conflict. And you know what's wild? Life itself doesn't think this way. Just look outside. A tree doesn't judge who sits in its shade. The sun doesn't decide who deserves its warmth. It just is. These categories, this whole good versus bad thing, that's a human invention. We made it up. So I know this might all sound a little out there, a little abstract, but there's actually a super practical way to understand this. Let's bring it down to earth and see how it applies to your life. Let's use an analogy. Think about a tool, say a knife. Is a knife good or bad? Well, neither, right? It's just a piece of metal. It's totally neutral. It has zero morality of its own. Now put that exact same knife in the hands of a skilled surgeon. What happens? It can literally save a life. It's a tool of healing. But put that same knife in the hand of someone who's completely lost in anger, and it can take a life. The tool didn't change one bit. The only thing that changed was the consciousness of the person holding it. And this is where it all comes back to you and me, because we are all walking around with incredibly powerful tools. Your mind, your emotions, your body, even your own energy. These are your instruments. And just like that knife, when they're used unconsciously, they can cause a lot of suffering. But when they're used with awareness, they are absolutely powerful tools for creating a beautiful life. Okay, so this all makes sense in theory, but how do we actually live this? How do we start moving beyond these simple and honestly pretty misleading labels of good and bad in our day-to-day lives? So, if we're trying to figure out what to do in a situation and asking, is this the right thing or the wrong thing, isn't actually the best question, then what should we be asking ourselves? What's the better question? Here it is. Instead of getting tangled up in, is this action good or bad? You just ask yourself one simple thing. Am I fully aware right now? That's it. Am I really conscious of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it? Or am I just running on an old program, some unconscious impulse I'm not even seeing? And you know, the most liberating thing about this shift is that you can finally stop that exhausting struggle of trying to be a good person. It's not about that anymore. Your focus just shifts to becoming more present, more aware, And what happens then? Well, your actions just naturally start to create more harmony and well-being. It's not forced, it just flows. So in the end, it really isn't about this constant battle to be good. It's simply about choosing to be aware. Because when you do that, when you cultivate that inner awareness, your life stops feeling like a minefield of difficult moral choices. It just becomes a natural expression of who you really are. The real question isn't, am I a good person? It's, am I awake?